At 91, you stop pretending there will always be more time to explain yourself. I'm not saying this to scare you, but to be honest, what I need to tell you now is something I carried quietly for decades, thinking I'd share it later. Sit with me for a moment, because what you're about to hear is the truth many people never say out loud. Have you ever delayed a conversation you knew mattered? Let me tell you who I am. I'm 91 years old. I've buried friends, family, and versions of myself I barely recognize now. I've lived long enough to see mistakes repeat themselves across generations, and that's why I'm speaking now. Not because I'm wise, but because I waited too long to say certain things. You may feel young today, but I once did too. For most of my life, I believed silence was safer than honesty. I believed keeping things to myself protected the people I loved. I told myself there would be a better time to talk, a calmer time, a stronger time. Have you ever told yourself that, thinking you were being kind? I wasn't a bad person. I worked, provided, stayed loyal, and showed up when I thought it counted. From the outside, my life looked stable, respectable, but there were words I swallowed, feelings I postponed. Truths I convinced myself didn't need to be spoken, and those unspoken things didn't disappear. They waited. As the years passed, I noticed something strange. The things I didn't say began to shape my relationships more than the things I did. Distance grew without arguments. Misunderstandings settled in without noise. Have you ever felt someone drift away without knowing exactly when it happened? People think regret comes from big mistakes. It doesn't. It comes from moments you let pass quietly. The phone calls you didn't make, the apologies you rehearsed but never delivered. The love you assumed was understood. I believed people knew how I felt. I was wrong. Now, at 91, I can see my life clearly, not through memories of success or failure, but through conversations that never happened. That's what stays with you when everything slows down. Not what you built, but what you didn't say. And that realization came later than it should have. I'm telling you this because there is something specific I wish someone had told me before it was too late to change things. It's not comforting, but it's necessary. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share next may change the way you think about silence, honesty, and the time you believe you still have. There was a moment years ago when I almost spoke. I remember it clearly. We were sitting at the kitchen table, late evening, the house quiet. I felt the words rise in my chest. An apology, a truth. I told myself it wasn't the right time. I told myself tomorrow would be better. Have you ever trusted tomorrow too much? Tomorrow came, but courage didn't. Life has a way of filling the silence for you. Work, responsibilities, fatigue, days pass, then years. The moment you meant to return to quietly disappears, and the longer you wait, the heavier the words become. They stop feeling like something you can say, and start feeling like something you must carry. I watched relationships change without arguments. Conversations became polite. Laughter stayed, but depth faded. I told myself this was normal, that this was what time did to people. But deep down, I knew something else was happening. We weren't growing apart because of conflict. We were growing apart because of avoidance. One day, the chance was gone. The person I meant to speak to was no longer there. No warning, no final conversation, just absence. That's when silence shows its true cost. Not in the moment you choose it, but in the moment you realize you can't undo it. Have you ever lost the chance to say something forever? People assume grief comes from loss alone. It doesn't. Grief grows heavier when it's mixed with unfinished words. Things you meant to explain. Love you assumed was obvious. Forgiveness you delayed. When someone leaves, they take your future conversations with them. That's a truth no one prepares you for. I began replaying old moments, not to relive them, but to rewrite them in my mind. I imagined saying what I should have said. I imagined different endings. But imagination doesn't heal regret. It only reminds you that clarity often arrives when action is no longer possible. That's why I'm speaking now. Not because I still have time, but because you do. You're listening to this while your story is still moving forward, while phone numbers still work, while doors can still be knocked on. The difference between us isn't age. It's opportunity. There is one truth I learned too late, and it's the reason I couldn't stay silent anymore. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you next is the simplest lesson I ever ignored, and the one that could save you from carrying the same regret I did. The truth I learned too late is painfully simple. People don't need perfect words. They need honest ones. I spent years waiting to say things the right way, at the right time, with the right tone. What I didn't understand was this: waiting doesn't protect love, it slowly starves it. Have you ever stayed quiet to avoid discomfort? I believed silence was a form of kindness, that not bringing things up would keep the peace. But peace built on avoidance is fragile. It looks calm on the surface, yet it leaves everything unresolved underneath. When time passed, the silence didn't disappear. It grew heavier, turning into distance I didn't know how to cross anymore. If I could go back, I wouldn't wait for certainty. I wouldn't wait to be calmer, stronger, or braver. I would speak while my voice still shook. I would say the things that felt awkward, because discomfort fades. Regret doesn't. Have you noticed how the things you avoid tend to stay with you the longest? I want you to understand this clearly. You don't need a dramatic speech. You don't need perfect timing. You just need honesty. A simple call, a short message, a sentence that starts with "I should have said this sooner." That's enough to change the direction of a relationship while you still can. At 91, I live quietly now. My days are slower. My circle is smaller, but my thoughts are clear. When everything else is stripped away, what matters most are the moments you chose courage over comfort, the words you didn't keep locked inside, the connections you didn't let fade without trying. If you're listening to me and thinking of someone right now, that's not an accident. That's your moment. Don't promise yourself you'll speak later. Later is never guaranteed. Say it while you still have a voice on the other end. Say it while time is still on your side. I can't go back and change what I didn't say, but you can. That's why I told you this before I go. Not to burden you with regret, but to spare you from it. If this story moved you, take a moment to like this video. It helps these stories reach people who need them. And if you want to hear more honest stories about life, aging, and the truths we often learn too late, consider subscribing. I'll continue sharing what time has taught me while I still can. Thank you for staying with me until the end.